Disclaimer: the following story is intended for a mature audience. Viewer discretion is advised. I never expected a simple afternoon of cleaning to turn into a moment that would leave me speechless. It started just like any other weekend. I was tidying up my room, lost in thought, folding clothes, and organizing the mess that had piled up over the week. The sound of soft footsteps behind me barely registered at first, but when I turned around, my stepson stood there in the doorway, his expression unreadable. There was something different about his presence, hesitation in his stance, like he had been standing there for a while, debating whether to say what was on his mind. My heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but curiosity. What was going through his head? He was always polite, always reserved, but at that moment, there was a weight behind his eyes that I couldn't quite place. Then, in a voice softer than I had ever heard before, he spoke. His words weren't what I expected. In fact, they caught me completely off guard. I paused, my hands gripping the shirt I had been folding. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Did he need help with something? Was he about to share a secret he had been keeping? Or was this one of those moments, those rare, fleeting moments in life, where everything suddenly shifts? I looked at him, waiting, my heart pounding slightly faster than before. But what he said next changed everything. I blinked, trying to process his words. For a moment, the room felt smaller, the air heavier. My stepson stood there, his expression unreadable, as if waiting for my reaction. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Instead, my mind spun with questions. This wasn't like him. He had always been respectful, polite, and kept to himself most of the time. We had a decent relationship, cordial, even friendly, but never overly personal. That's why his sudden presence in my room, paired with what he just said, felt so out of place. I searched his face for clues, but he wasn't giving anything away. His eyes, usually steady, held something else now. Uncertainty? Hesitation? It was hard to tell. Whatever was on his mind, it was clear that he had been thinking about it for a while. The silence stretched between us, making the moment even more intense. I finally forced a small smile, trying to keep my tone light. "That's unexpected," I said, folding the shirt in my hands a little slower than before. "What made you say that?" He shifted his weight, glancing down for a second before meeting my gaze again. "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I just felt like I needed to tell you." His words sent another wave of confusion through me. There was something deeper here, something unspoken. But instead of pushing him, I nodded, giving him space to continue if he wanted to. A part of me wondered if something had happened. Had he been holding this in for a long time? Was he struggling with something and didn't know how to talk about it? I suddenly felt a strange mix of emotions: concern, curiosity, and the lingering weight of the unknown. He took a slow breath, his hands slipping into his pockets. "I know it's weird. I didn't want to keep it to myself anymore." My chest tightened slightly. There was more to this, more than he was saying. But before I could ask, he took a small step back, like he was already second-guessing himself. "I should probably go," he muttered, his voice quieter now. I felt the moment slipping away, but I wasn't ready to let it. "Wait," I said, stepping forward. "Are you okay?" He hesitated, then gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "I don't know," he finally said, and with that he turned, walking away before I could say anything else. I stood there, heart pounding, the weight of his words still hanging in the air. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the empty doorway where he had just been. His words echoed in my head, circling over and over, refusing to settle. I don't know. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. There was something behind those words, something heavy, and the way he walked away, like he wasn't sure if he should have spoken at all, left me unsettled. I took a slow breath, trying to shake the feeling, but it stayed with me. My mind raced through every conversation we'd had, searching for some kind of clue. Had something happened recently? Had I missed something? He had always been a little distant, but never like this. I decided to wait a while before going to find him. If he needed space, I wanted to give it to him. But I also wasn't going to ignore whatever this was. I went back to folding my clothes, but I wasn't really focused. My thoughts kept drifting back to him, to that look on his face. I nodded, leaning against the door frame. Anything you want to talk about? He hesitated, not sure how to say it. That feeling returned, the weight of something unspoken. I didn't want to pressure him, but I also didn't want him to think he had to carry it alone. You don't have to have the right words, I said gently. Just say whatever's on your mind. He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. It's just, I've been feeling different lately. About a lot of things. I waited, giving him time. He exhaled, frustrated with himself. I don't know if it's good or bad, just different. And I don't know what to do with it. His voice had a raw honesty that made my heart tighten. Whatever this was, it mattered to him, and I had a feeling it was only the beginning. I watched him closely, sensing the struggle in his words. He wanted to say more, but something was holding him back. The way his fingers tensed, the way his shoulders shifted. It was like he was bracing himself for something. I could feel the weight of whatever was on his mind, pressing into the silence between us. Different how? I asked carefully, keeping my voice steady. His jaw tightened slightly. I don't know. Like I'm seeing things in a way I didn't before. Thinking about things I never really questioned. He let out a frustrated sigh. And it's messing with me. The tension in his voice sent a ripple of unease through me. This wasn't just a passing thought or a moment of self-reflection. This was something that had been building for a while. Something he had been carrying alone. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You don't have to figure it all out at once, I said. But if you're feeling lost, you don't have to be alone in it. His eyes flickered toward me, searching, like he was trying to decide if he could trust me with whatever was going on in his head. I appreciate that, he muttered. I do. It's just complicated. Complicated. That one word held so much weight, and the way he said it, like it was something he had tried to untangle but only made worse, made my chest tighten. A beat of silence passed before he spoke again, quieter this time. I keep thinking that if I say it out loud, it's going to change everything. The air in the room felt thick, charged with something unspoken. I could see it in his face, in the way he hesitated, like he was teetering on the edge of something big. And yet, he still wasn't saying it. Maybe it already has, I said softly. His breath caught slightly, just for a second, and I knew my words had hit something deeper. His hands clenched at his sides like he was holding something back, fighting some internal battle that I couldn't see. I had never seen him like this before, so torn between wanting to speak and fearing what would happen if he did. Then, just as he opened his mouth to say something, a noise from the hallway made us both jump. We turned at the same time, and in that instant, I knew, whatever he had been about to say, it was something I would never be able to unhear. The sudden noise from the hallway made us both jolt. My heart pounded as I turned toward the door, expecting to see someone standing there. But the hallway was empty. A second passed, then another. Nothing. Just silence. I glanced back at him, but his entire expression had shifted. Whatever he had been about to say, the moment was gone. His jaw clenched, his shoulders tensed, and just like that, the wall was back up. I should go, he muttered, stepping past me. Wait. My hand instinctively reached out, but I stopped myself before touching his arm. He didn't look at me, just kept moving toward the door. Something about the way he was leaving felt wrong, like he was shutting down completely. I knew if I let him go now, I might never get the truth out of him. Please, I said softly, whatever it is, you don't have to go through it alone. He paused, his back still to me. For a second, I thought he might turn around, might finally say what had been weighing on him. But then he let out a short breath and shook his head. It's better this way, he mumbled before walking out. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing. The air in the room still felt thick with unspoken words, but now they were slipping further away. I wanted to chase after him, demand to know what he had been holding back, but something told me that pushing would only make him retreat further. Still, the unease in my gut refused to settle. Something wasn't right. I walked to the doorway and peered into the hallway. The house was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. That noise, it hadn't been my imagination. Someone else had been there. Someone had heard us. I stepped out cautiously, scanning the hall. Nothing seemed out of place, but as I passed by the living room, my breath caught. The front door was unlocked. I knew for a fact that I had locked it earlier. I always did. A chill ran down my spine as I slowly approached the door. I pressed my palm against the wood, pushing it just enough to hear the soft creak of the hinges. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. To see someone standing outside? To find proof that someone had been here? But there was nothing, just the quiet night beyond the doorway. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. If the door had been unlocked, then someone had been inside. Someone had been close enough to hear us. And now, they were gone. I turned back toward the hallway, my mind spinning. Had he known? Had he felt it too? Was that why he had shut down so suddenly? A deep sense of unease settled in my chest. I didn't know who had been listening or what they had heard, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over, and whatever my stepson had been about to tell me, someone else might already know. I took a slow step back from the door, my pulse still pounding. The feeling of being watched, of something being just out of reach, wouldn't go away. My mind kept circling back to my stepson, his hesitation, the way he shut down, and now this. It couldn't be a coincidence. Someone had been there. Someone had heard us. Determined to get answers, I turned and walked straight to his room. His door was closed, but light seeped out from the gap at the bottom. I knocked once, and when he didn't answer, I pushed it open. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, his body tense. He didn't look up. I told you it's better this way, he muttered. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. I don't think that's true, I said quietly. And I don't think you do either. He let out a long breath, rubbing his face before finally meeting my eyes. There was something raw there, something almost desperate. I didn't want you to find out this way, he admitted. But I think someone wanted you to. A cold chill spread through me. What do you mean? He hesitated, like he was still trying to decide how much to say. Then, finally, he exhaled sharply. There's something I've been keeping from you. I thought if I ignored it, if I kept pretending, it would just go away. But it hasn't, and now I think someone else knows. My throat tightened. Knows what? He looked down, his hands gripping the fabric of his jeans. A few weeks ago, I found something. An old letter hidden in one of my dad's boxes in the attic. It was addressed to you. I felt my breath hitch. A letter? He nodded. I didn't read all of it, but what I saw, it made me question everything, and I wasn't sure how to bring it up. My head spun. His dad had passed away years ago, and I had thought I knew everything there was to know. But if there was a letter I had never seen, what did it say? And more importantly, who had been listening tonight? Before I could ask more, a sudden noise from outside made both of us freeze. A rustling sound just beyond his bedroom window. We weren't alone, and whoever was out there, they had been waiting for this moment. For a moment, neither of us moved. My stepson's eyes locked onto mine, filled with the same tension I felt creeping up my spine. The rustling outside was unmistakable. Someone was there. Someone had been listening. I took a slow step toward the window, careful not to make a sound. He did the same, his breath shallow. With one quick motion, I pulled the curtain back. But by the time we looked outside, whoever had been there was already gone. The only thing left was the faint sway of the bushes, the eerie silence settling around us. I turned back to him. Who else knew about the letter? He swallowed hard. Just me. And now, whoever that was. The realization sank in like a heavy weight. Someone had been watching us, waiting for the right moment. But why? And what was in that letter that made it worth hiding? Where is it now? I asked. He hesitated, then walked to his nightstand and pulled open the drawer. From inside, he carefully unfolded a worn, yellowed envelope. My heart pounded as he handed it to me. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from his father. With slightly trembling hands, I pulled out the letter and began to read. The words blurred together at first, my mind racing to keep up. But as I reached the middle, my breath caught. It wasn't just a letter, it was a confession. His father had been keeping a secret. One he had never told me, one that could change everything. And now, after all these years, someone else had wanted to make sure I found out. I looked up at my stepson, my chest tight. This is why you didn't know how to tell me. He nodded. I didn't know if it would make things better or worse, but I think someone wanted you to see it. A shiver ran through me as I thought back to the unlocked door, the sounds outside. Whoever had been watching us, whoever had been there tonight, they had known. And now, so did I. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady. No more secrets, I said firmly. Whatever this means for us, we'll figure it out.